Hi, folks. Thanks everyone for joining. We're going to get started now, so I appreciate you joining and spending the time with us. We'll try and make this as good a use of your time as possible, and get you back into your workday. Hopefully with a better understanding for what we're here to talk about today. So, my name is Jamie. I actually have a slide on who I am, but from a perspective and an agenda today, we'll be taking you through. What is SharePoint really quickly. Hopefully give you a little sense for what that means. We're going to dive right into a demo. We want to make this as interactive as possible in terms of not having this be 50 PowerPoint slides. I swear our deck is less than 7 slides total. And then really just jump and open up to Q&A and next steps. So as I mentioned, my name is Jamie McMahon. I'm with ProServe IT. I see a lot of familiar faces in the attendee list, so great to see you back. And for those new faces that I haven't met before, welcome. Glad you could join. I also have with us Keith, who is one of our SharePoint solution architects, resident here at ProServe IT, who will probably be doing most of the driving when it comes to the content and delivery. Really quickly, for those of you that don't know who ProServe IT is, ProServe IT is primarily a Microsoft consulting shop. We offer 3 main lines of business. We have our professional services organization, our software development organization, and our managed services business. But really, we see ourselves differentiating in 3 distinct areas. So one, we are a full stack shop, so we can help customers literally from the beginning of their journey, working with infrastructure, cloud, etc., through to custom development, SharePoint, portal, CRM, all the way to managing and running the environment in partnership or instead of a customer. So really being able to be there kind of from beginning to end of a customer's infrastructure or IT journey. Our second differentiation is really around, we apply a security lens to everything we do. So we really want to make sure that we have our customers and your best interests at heart when it comes to making sure that what we do securely. And the third area is really we're focused on helping customers eliminate IT debt. And what I mean by that is, having assets and having technology that they've purchased but not actually implementing or deploying to its fullest. We really want to make sure that our customers can achieve the fullest value of the technology they purchased. And that's really the genesis for this conversation. So what is SharePoint? I think SharePoint is many things to a lot of people. Some people think of SharePoint strictly as a file server in the cloud. I've heard other people describe SharePoint as really just a document management environment. But for us, what SharePoint means is SharePoint's really a total collaboration platform that's really all about making your businesses more effective, more efficient, while at the same time more secure. And when I talk about IT debt and eliminating IT debt, I mention this because many people have SharePoint and actually don't even know it or aren't using it. And by that I mean, if you have an Office 365 plan and have an Office 365 business, i.e. Business Premium or Business Essentials, or you have an enterprise SKU like E1, E3, E5, you already have it. And that's why I said I think it's a great idea to look at how to best leverage the assets that you've already purchased. So with that, we're going to flip it over to Keith to kind of run us through the demo. But just to give you a sense of what we expect and how to make this a good use of your time, we do hope that if you do have questions, please type the questions into the chat window. We'll be fielding those questions in real time. We want to make sure that we answer all of your questions. And quite frankly, we feel that this will be a better use of everyone's time if it is interactive. So the more questions, the merrier, and I'll be moderating those and bringing those up to Keith as he takes us through the demo of SharePoint. And I guess without further ado, we'll pass it over to Keith to take us through SharePoint.
All right, thanks, Jamie. So as Jamie introduced me, I'm Keith, and I am the resident SharePoint solution architect. However, today, we're actually going to do some role-playing, and I am going to pretend I'm Keith from Contoso Fashions. So here at Contoso Fashions, we have both a retail and manufacturing arm, and you can go into one of our brick and mortar retail stores and buy our clothes, or we actually have a manufacturing department where not only do we manufacture our own clothes, but we do corporate sales as well. So I'm part of corporate sales, and I'm a salesperson, and I'm going to walk you through sort of like a day in the life of how we get stuff done here at Contoso Fashions utilizing Office 365 and SharePoint Online. So without further ado, I'm stepping into my office.com portal, and most of you are familiar with this. If you have Office 365, when you log in, this is what you first see. And you could go in through, this is where you're starting off to use Outlook, Word, Excel, but today we're going to focus on SharePoint. So I'm just going to click on SharePoint here in our app drawer, and this is going to load our SharePoint portal. So this kind of brings back all the sites that I'm working in. So anything that I am subscribed to or I'm following shows up on the left-hand side here. So like I said, I'm part of corporate sales, so I have the corporate sales intranet here, and I have the sales training site, and also our whole corporation-wide Contoso intranet site too as well. So this kind of gives me an outlook of what I have. It's sort of my day-to-day first thing I see, and it's organized, and I don't have to go through any of the clutter to see that, right?
So this surfaces all the stuff that's contextually specific to you and your role.
Yeah, exactly, right? And like I said, if we're talking about my specific role, corporate sales, I have that bookmarked here on the left-hand side. And of course, since these SharePoint sites are also regular websites, we could also bookmark it from like Chrome or Internet Explorer, whatever browser you're using, right? So the first thing we're going to show them is actually the intranet portal, our internal corporation intranet. So this is sort of like a landing page where I can go in and get all the information for what's happening within our company. And this is great for building the corporate culture and also getting sort of like a view of what's going on without actually going into some of Office 365's applications. So the first thing that we see here is our news section. So like I mentioned, these are articles that would have the latest news. Let's say we have Contoso Cares, that's our charity department. They're working on a new charity organization, right? So there's some news behind the scenes news article about that too as well. So this kind of goes back to the whole corporate culture of it, and I'm able to learn. Let's say I've been on vacation for a week. I want to come back and know what's going on within the company. This provides me with that, right? And this is all from the front page.
So it's really just the big picture, what's going on perspective.
Exactly, right? So what we have here, if I scroll down, is another great part. It's a dashboard, right? And the good thing about SharePoint is it's a collaboration environment, but what enables that collaboration is everything is sort of real time and everything's dynamic. So the information is not static, right? This data is being updated in the back end. We don't really need to know why, or sorry, how, but with this, we're able to see it from, let's say, a retail associate or an executive comes in. They don't necessarily need to query this data. All they need to see is the charts. Are we doing well? Are we doing bad? You know, I could actually click on, let's say, Alan here. It's fully dynamic. Everything updates, right? You can see the map updated too as well, because this is Alan's district, and it looks like he's doing pretty all right, right?
So this is really a great way to get that, red, yellow, green perspective in terms of how you're doing, and these metrics are really specific to me and my role. So this is information that I have because I'm in the role that I'm in.
That's correct, and that's all part of SharePoint's audience targeting, right? So going back to, let's say I'm an executive, or I need to see specific information, but that's might be a bit different if it was a retail associate at a store level, right? And that kind of ties in with permissions, which we'll talk about in a second too. So if I keep scrolling, there's cool little things too as well, like upcoming events. I have the Ride for Heart pretty soon in downtown Toronto. I'll probably be taking part in that too as well. I could click over to get some more information, and here we have Employee of the Month. This is actually pretty cool. If I highlight over, I could see what Adele is working on too, who she reports to, any kind of communications information.
And so this is all just being populated and surfaced up real time, and this has all the information about the people in your organization as well.
Exactly, and this is all done through Office 365. All this information is being populated, so I don't have to do any of this work to get this to where it is, right? And as a user, I don't have to click into multiple products just to get to this information. It's all there in real time, dynamic, from the front page, all right? So if I scroll up here, I'm just going to continue on. Like I said, I just got back from vacation. I'm all updated. I'm ready to go. I remember that I did have a quote that I was working on. And like I said, we're doing really well. And this latest sale will kind of put us up and above that. So I'm just going to head back into that SharePoint portal. And I am going to click on Corporate Sales. Now, the corporate sales is a bit different than the intranet. It's sort of like an intranet, but it's specifically for my corporate sales department. It's a team site, and this has all the information and all the documents and all the items that I'm working on, and I want to collaborate as a team all in one area. So, as you can see from the corporate sales team page, we have the latest events, and this is specific not only to me, but specific to my team, right? And I could click through too as well, and the documents that we are working on recently.
We just have a few questions that have come up, and maybe I thought I'd just pause before we jump into further. We have one individual that is asking if we are going to have any slideware after the presentation, going over high-level points that can be presented to executives around ROI realization from SharePoint. So I can answer that one. We don't have any content in terms of marketing or value proposition around SharePoint. Really, we wanted to make this a demo-based environment that is more of a show or an experience versus a show. We, of course, do have SharePoint content or ROI content around SharePoint that we're happy to do. So if you like, we can send that afterwards. We've got another question from Paul. Paul is asking, can the store sales window, or this is back on the previous page, can the store sales window create graphs and charts from a DB2 database or only from MS SQL? So the behind the scenes, and we won't get too much into the how for this, basically this is being surfaced up via Power BI, so it's a component of Office 365 here. It is all real time. This is based off of a Microsoft SQL database. However, there are integration points into other technologies. I'd need to check. I don't know offhand whether DB2 is one of the databases supported, but Paul, we can kind of follow up with you individually after the fact to answer that. And then the last question we have is from Reg. Reg is asking, how do we set up the reporting relationships between employees? That's a great question, Reg. That's all done based on, it's actually however you configure it, but generally speaking, you do it at a group level or a role level where you've got security groups that define what a person or a role is allowed to see or what they can or cannot do. And that based on that role, when a user signs into this environment, they're only exposed or can see information or content that's specific to their role or their individual. So thanks, and great questions so far. We're going to continue to take some breaks in between to answer any more questions that come up, but maybe I'll turn it back over to Keith to continue the story.
Sure. So going back to the corporate sales private group that we created within SharePoint, it has all the information at a glance, similar to the intranet site. And what I want to kind of pause and say here is that from a permission standpoint, corporate sales is only available to us and also the people that work with us directly on our specific documents. So I'm going to speak about two people here, Pardeep and Adele. So Pardeep is our manufacturing supervisor, he's going to help us on one of the documents. And with Adele, she's going to help us, and she is from finance, from the accounting team. So we've given them permission to access this group and the documents that belong to it. So they can edit, they can create documents, etc. However, there might be instances, let's say our exec Bill, we don't really want him to touch these documents. We just kind of want to keep it clean. He just needs a view only of what's going on. I need to send him an email with the document just to have it there. So we can create these different permission groups and have these different permission accesses within one SharePoint team or a document or document library. We could get really granular like that.
So this is all based on how we set up SharePoint and also how we define security in our business. And
exactly.
We have the ability to determine that both at time of creation as well as modify this as we go.
That's right. And it's really easy to manage too as well, right? Like you said, SharePoint has that versatility. It's not really having your corporation workflow work around SharePoint. It's the other way around. SharePoint works for your workflow, right? And we know that different companies have different best practices, different standards, different workflows, and that's why we always recommend SharePoint, because you have that versatility, right?
Perfect.
So going into corporate sales, I'm going to click over here on the left-hand side because I want to focus on document collaboration. And document collaboration within SharePoint is sort of like the bread and butter of SharePoint, and that's what most people know SharePoint to be. So with the SharePoint document library, if some of you have used it, you might be familiar with this interface. And right now this is just a bunch of documents that we're working on within corporate sales. And like I said, only certain people have permissions to edit those. And one thing I want to kind of go back to before we even talk about SharePoint, but it's more about how some people work right now, and it's more with file share servers, right? So a lot of people are used to having a file share, and they'll have a bunch of folders organized a certain way, and depending on the department, they have permissions based on it. The only thing is, the person that was managing those permissions, they've left the company, then it's kind of gotten messy over the years. It's really been hard to manage that, right? So we're going to help alleviate that issue with some of those issues with SharePoint.
Mm-hmm.
Permissions, we've already spoke about it, but I want to talk about organizing, right? So the great thing about SharePoint documents is that you could actually tag them with metadata. You could create columns and say, hey, this document belongs to this client, and it was done by this year, like you can see here. And the document type is, let's say it's a form or a template. So the reason why I'm tagging these is because I know that different people in my, not only corporation, but even within my department work a different way and organize their documents in a different way. So me personally, being a salesperson, I like to organize it. I'm not sure how you do it, Jamie, but I like to organize it by client, right? And so I have, if I click right here under the view options, I have a view called McCormick. And this is going to bring back all the documents that belong to corporate sales, but has been tagged as McCormick, right? Because let's say I want to work on this deal and I need the supplementary documents so I can refer to it, right?
Right.
Now, however, let's talk about someone like Deborah, who would come in. She's part of accounting. She specifically works with reports. So instead of, if we had a file share and I organized it by folders by clients, then she would have to go in, click into the client, get the report, come back out, do the same thing again and again. That gets tedious, right? So I'm going to go back, click on all documents just to see how we originally had it. And I have created a view for her where it brings back reports. And that's from all the companies. Right? So there's different ways that people work, and this kind of allows it for that. So I'm just going to kind of quickly show you how you could also create your own views. It's really simple. All we have to do is click on the filter pane here. And this kind of goes back to how, like, if we're shopping online, I know there's people out there that kind of like browsing around, but when I want something, I just go, I know what I want the color, this color, I want this feature, etc. So if I'm on Amazon's website, I am able to filter by color. I could say, okay, I want this feature, I want the media key feature, I want the multilingual keyboard. And when I click on those filters, it allows me to get those products filtered out straight to that. So I could do that within SharePoint too as well, as long as I tag my documents, right? So if I'm working in 2017 and I want to bring it down to McCormick, and honestly, if I really want to, I could probably get down to the document type too as well, right? And now you can see here, if I click on the view and I click Save View As, I'm able to save another view with this exact filter. So sorry, if I'm working on these documents and this kind of filter all the time, I might as well create a view for it, right?
So you can almost create a different filter both based on job type or based on an activity that you're performing within your job.
Yeah.
That might change day by day. You really have a lot of ability to customize the content and view it in a way that makes sense to you in the role that you're doing in the job that you're performing.
Exactly, right? And we could even do it not only by role, but we could do it by person. So if Dave reaches out to me and he says, I just created a document, I can filter it by the person, I can filter it by a recent date too as well, a date range. So there's many ways we can filter it. And it's up to really the businesses, going back to how SharePoint is very versatile. It's up to the business process to come up with that. And usually, like us here, corporate sales, we got together, sat down and said, we're going to add these metadata because that's what works for us.
Right.
Right. So the reason why I came back in here, like I said, I had that quote, right? So I'm going to switch over to McCormick. And here's that shirt quote that I have here.
So while you're pulling it up, we just had a quick question from Paul around can these views be pushed to users or can you reconfigure them ahead of time?
Yeah, so you can configure these ahead of time. So that it's a good thing that you brought that up. So these views that I have selected, they are actually specific to the whole corporate sales group, right? Now, I could also create my own private views, right? So, and that's only visible to me. Right. So, like, I guess since we mentioned, I like to work with based on client name.
Yep.
That's only specific to me. And then we can have views, they're called public views, which is for the rest of the department.
Okay, great.
All right. So going back to here, I got to get this shirt quote out to for approval. But before that, there are some changes. I messaged Deborah on Skype just to say that there's a few information that I needed some help on, like address. So I'm going to open this up. Now this opens it up in Microsoft Word web apps. And really simply, it's just the web version of Microsoft Office products, right? Which is what Office 365 is famous for. And actually, oh, look right here, Deborah Bridger is also editing, right? And you can see, actually, I can see her cursor right here. And it looks like she's doing some edits here. We're just going to make a few edits here, too, as well. So this is all real time. Right? I'm making these edits, she's making these edits, and we're both seeing each other's edits too as well. And if I wanted, I could click right here, and this brings up a chat. Hey, thanks for helping me out. All right? And we're just going to continue working. I mean, everything here looks fine. Deborah said something. Of course, okay, perfect. And I mean, this looks perfect. It looks great. Okay, so I'm just going to close this up. Now, remember, this is the Microsoft SharePoint Online version that we're working on. This hasn't been downloaded to my computer. I mean, if I wanted, I could go in and edit it directly in Word, and it will pop up the actual Word document. But since it has that connection to SharePoint, it's always going to be the latest updated version, which makes collaboration great, right? Deborah, right now, I'm here in Toronto, but Deborah's up in Montreal. So I don't always have the opportunity to sit right beside her and work on documents, and I can't go to her desk and work on documents. So this is great for those kind of collaboration features, right? And with Deborah doing this collaboration, another good setting that comes up is versioning. Right. So if Deborah makes an edit, that I don't necessarily like, I could always go back to previous versions as well too, right? So I'm happy with this, and Deborah seems to be happy as well too. So I'm going to go back to the documents section. And like I said, we need to get this approved from 2 other people. So Pradeep, who I said was part of manufacturing, he's a manufacturing supervisor. I need him to kind of approve the numbers, right? Because I can't send in an order, and if we're at full capacity, that's not going to work. And since I did do a deal on this, I need to get this to finance, so make sure the numbers are right. So over here on the left-hand side, now this is a list that I created specifically and configured, and it has a workflow attached to it.
Okay, so before we jump over to the work, sorry, you can jump in. We've got
it looks like we have tons of questions.
Yeah, we've got a few questions that have been asked, and I know that we're kind of jumping into a new stream of content here. So just to cover the things that are relevant to where we were. So Sheldon asked, how does this work with the on-premise Office Suite 2013, 2016? So I'll get you to correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe even if you want to answer that.
So which feature are we talking about?
Because if we're talking collaboration.
If you want to speak to that collaboration, if we're speaking about the views,
right?
That's exactly the same since 2013.
Yeah. But I think the question's merely around the Office, so like Word 2013, Word 2016. So Sheldon, the answer is this will work with, I think, as early as 2010. You do have got some feature degradation within that to really get it to work. It's basically 2013 or 2016 as the, let's say, the minimum options. Of course, if you're running an Office 365 Business Premium or E3 SKU and above, you will have that as part of your suite of products, and so you'll kind of have that natively. And Jordana asked 2 questions, which I'll kind of just see if I can concatenate into one. Her questions are around limitations around who we can share documents with, and is it only inside or outside the company, and how do we invite? So it seems like it's all around sharing the documents, who we can share the documents with, and how we share.
Yeah, so I mean, just without getting too far into detail, but you could select the actual document and click on share here. And so you can share it both internally and externally. Now, if it's internally, I'll give them temporary access to it. So if I give, let's say, Bill, once again, our exec, he only has view access, but right here you can see I could allow him to view and edit that, right, and it will temporarily add it. Now, externally, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, we have to add them to our AD.
So if I want to go and share to someone that's outside the organization, then you actually have the ability, and there's a couple of ways that you can do it. Kind of depends on how you want to secure it, Jordana. So you do have the abilities to, let's say, provide a sharing link outside your organization, and anyone outside of your organization can then come in and edit it and read it, and you can just blanket state that. You can also tighten up that security and say they need to be a trusted individual with an account. So there's some granularity in how you share the content with people outside your organization. The great thing about that, though, as you collaborate with external users, you don't need to license anyone that does not work for your company. The only people that you need to make sure that you own licenses for and are your employees, people creating the content. But if you share them externally, they can come in, they can edit it, and they can do that without needing to purchase anything. I'll give you a really good use case. We've got one of our customers that's in the construction business. They basically are a big general contractor, and they frequently work with many vendors, and they sub out multiple, like the plumbing or electrical or construction of a big job site. And so they'll need multiple vendors to come in and drop in documents relative to this construction project that's in flight, and they are able to grant access on a temporary basis to these external vendors such that they can deposit these documents, collaborate on them, but ultimately it's that construction company that owns the content, and they're able to take away access or restrict it or limit that data whenever they feel they need to. So it's quite powerful and quite granular, both from a collaboration perspective as well as from a security perspective. But those are some Some great questions, and I know that there's a lot more to go out, maybe not a lot more, but we did want to kind of walk through and continue that use case of Keith working on his quote.
Yeah. So just getting back to this approval workflow that I need approved. Sorry, this quote that we need to get approved. So like I said, I have to get it to the right people. They need to approve it, and then from there I could get it to the client. So taking a step back, without SharePoint, we would have to do this all manually. I would have to take the document from my file share, maybe attach it to a document, an email, send it to Adele, send it to Pradeep, hope that they get back to me in time, right? So I might have to go over to their desk, nudge them, make sure that they're working on it, and then come back, maybe make some changes too as well. It kind of gets a bit messy, right?
Right.
And I've seen companies, believe it or not, print out pieces of paper, put them into folders, inbox and outbox. If we're talking old school, they're still continuing to do it that way. So we want to get rid of all this. We want to keep it, paperless and within SharePoint. And like I mentioned, we're going to focus on attaching a SharePoint link, so that document will always be up to date, right? And no matter what changes are being made throughout the approval process, it's always going to be the latest copy that they have. So like I mentioned, I created a list called quotes, and this will be sort of like the starting ground for my approval. And with Microsoft Flow, I'm able to create a workflow that will allow me to email this and allow for us to collaborate on this. So I'm going to click on New here, and I'm just going to fill this out. Let's call this McCormick quote. Client is McCormick, the total 15,000, the quantity 10,000. We'll skip the status for now. And then right here, like I mentioned, we don't want to attach a brand new document. We want to just browse over to our document library. And actually, if you notice right here on the left-hand side, top left, I can actually use views. So if I click on that, there's my view that I have. It's a public view, so click on McCormick. It loads it up, and now I have it right here. Select it, insert. And it's inserting, it's not attaching, it's inserting that link directly to that SharePoint document. So I'm going to click Save, and that saves it to my quotes workflow list. Right? Now, what should happen is the first thing is being sent out to Pradeep, right? So I'm just going to refresh this.
So you're just refreshing the screen to see if the status is updated.
Yeah. So as you can see, it's out for approval. And you'll notice this, as we go through the different steps, I could get pretty granular. I could say it's being sent out to this person, now it's being sent out to that person, and it's giving you that audit trail, right? So this ensures that I've taken the right steps, just in case anything happens. I've done my work, right? I've done it correct, and this ensures that there hasn't been a feature that's missed, right? Because everything's being automated. There's no human error, let's say, right? We're not skipping any steps. So I'm actually going to switch over. I'm going to do some more role playing. I'm going to pretend I'm Pradeep.
So you are Keith. You've created a quote. You've submitted it for approval, and there's a couple of steps that need to happen in that approval process. And the first step that needs to happen is Pradeep, I think you're saying, that needs to approve it, and he sits in operations, if I remember.
Manufacturing.
Okay.
So the thing about Pradeep, though, is he's heading to a meeting in LA. So he's at the airport. But I know I could probably catch him because this sent out an email, and he has SharePoint and Word installed on his Android phone. So I'm going to show you right now. This is just a mirror of my screen, my Android phone. And now this is also Android and iPhone. It's available for iPhone too. And you can notice I have Outlook, SharePoint, and Word. I also have Excel, PowerPoint, the full Office 365. And I'm at the airport as Pradeep. I have some downtime because I'm past security, I'm past baggage. I'm just waiting to board the plane. I have about an hour, right? I probably don't need that long, but let's just go into Outlook.
I hope you don't need that long.
Yeah. So right here, there you go. Keith has sent us an email. Actually, it wasn't him. It's through SharePoint, right?
Yeah, this was all automated. I remember that.
Right. So a new quote has been created, the McCormick quote, and if you guys notice, the client, the quantity, the total, that's been exposed into the email, right? We fill that out. So this information, as Patty, that could be enough, but just to be here, I want to see this quote information. So if you can notice, it's going to open up SharePoint, and what that does is it brings up the SharePoint app that's built into Android. And then from there, since we have a direct link to the Word document, it's going to open up Microsoft Word, the mobile app. Now the mobile app, just going back to the whole thing about the mobile app versus the client and some of the other versions, they are I guess the basic versions compared to like editing it on your desktop, right? Actually, so this was a SharePoint item, right? So I have to click here and go into Microsoft Word, opens up Word. Now it opens up Word, sorry. It's opening it, and there you see, this is read-only, right? I could actually edit if I want to, but I really just need to see if it's, yep, we could definitely take care of this, 10,000, right? It's going out at 150. Okay, I mean, maybe accounting might have something to say with that, but I'm just manufacturing, right? Everything looks good. I'm just going to go back into Outlook, and what I'm going to do is click on Approve, because it's been fine with me, and it's been approved. All right? So up next, I'm just going to go back to me, Keith. Right? I'm going to refresh it. And last time it was out for approval. Now the status is approved by manufacturing.
Right. So there's a visual prompt letting you know that the process is moving forward. It's gone to the next step of approval, and now it's off to whomever is next in the chain. Exactly.
Right. And the next person on the chain is actually Adele.
Right.
All right. So I have Adele's SharePoint here. Actually, quickly, the Contoso intranet that you're seeing here is kind of a bit different from the Contoso intranet that I was viewing. I was an intranet manager, so I had edit, but for hers, all you see is a clean interface. You don't see any editing. So going back to the whole permissions, Adele doesn't need to edit anything on the intranet.
Right.
It's a page, right? So she just needs to grab that information. So carrying on to the actual email, Keith right here, request for your input. Okay, I'm going to quote information. I'm going to open that up. Very similar to how Pradeep was working. And this is a Shirt doc. And it downloads it. And once again, it's downloading the SharePoint version. I'm going to enable editing here.
But now you're in the full version of Word.
Yep.
And it's just grabbing the file, though, from SharePoint. So this file still is in SharePoint. You're not copying it back and forth.
Correct. Exactly, right? Even though it's even though it's not using the web app or it's not physically SharePoint, it still has that connection, right? So this is great. Like, I guess a really good use case here is, what if someone is working on that document and it's still in approval, but let's say they want to make those changes, they can still make those changes as the workflow process is being updated, and it's always going to be that live updated version. So I'm just going through it right now. It looks like everything looks good. It's a bit of a deal, but you know, whenever we make deals, we actually collect 100% of the deposit. So I'm just gonna go in here. I have permissions to edit this. I'm gonna save this, close that out, and go back to my email and click on approve. So I'm approving my changes as well too, and approving Keith's changes as well, right? And maybe I'll send out an email later or Skype Keith saying that, hey, I made this change, right? Or
that can be done automatically too.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So we haven't added it to this workflow, but that's a good perspective as well. I could create a text box where I could fill in saying, hey, this is why I changed it, and that goes back to Keith, right? So I'm going to minimize this and go back to Keith. So I'm Keith again, right? Corporate sales, salesman, and I'm going to refresh this. And now the status is approved. And what I can do, take that, send it in an email, print it, whatever that needs to be done from a workflow perspective to get it to the client.
So if I'm just going to kind of walk back through, and that's actually great. I think that really helps you understand, because you mentioned before, right, if this is the old way of doing things, or I think for most people actually the current way of doing things, right? It would be sending that attachment, you'd send it to multiple people, there'd be, you know, version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, Jamie, version 5, final, right, and all that stuff. And at the end of the day, you know, probably if you wanted to get that document back, you know, let's say a week from now, you're probably going to email the person who you think is the authoritative source for that document, and you've got nowhere to go where you can actually trust that that piece of content is final and current and the right version.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Good. Yep. So we're going to flip back, and I think that was most of the use cases that we really wanted to show within in SharePoint. Just as a quick summary in terms of what we covered. So we really wanted to show what it would like to start your day with an intranet, get a quick update in terms of what's going on from a big picture perspective from your organization. Also get a good, you know, red light, green light, yellow light perspective on how your metrics are doing. Again, that's all real time. That's populated with data that's relevant and specific to me and my role, and it allows me to drill in and kind of look and dig a little deeper if I want to. But it does give me that dashboard view. You know, in the scenario, we were the sales rep, needed to get a quote out real quick, you know, made some quick changes from my mobile phone, you know, approved it, and off we go. And really, I think what we showed there is that we were able to make Keith more effective, we were able to make Keith more efficient, and also, quite frankly, we were able to make Contoso, the organization, more secure. And I think that's what we tried to show here.
Yep.
So.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's exactly it.
Great. So I've got a few more things to chat about. If you do have questions, again, continue to ask them. We're happy to talk about them. But in the meantime, I'll get you to flip back to
Sure.
the deck. No worries. So in terms of next steps, so if this is something that is interesting to you, we do have a number of packaged offers that I think become very specific and relevant to depending on where you are coming from a SharePoint perspective or from a document management or collaboration perspective. On one hand, we have a migration to SharePoint where, you know, really that's all around helping you get your content up into SharePoint. That's more of a migration activity. And the second offering is really around getting SharePoint up and going, putting the bones in place, the foundation in place that's going to make your SharePoint environment successful, that will really allow that migration to happen. And both of these are packaged. They are size specific, so it kind of depends on the size of your organization. It could range anywhere from, let's say, $10,000 ballpark, perhaps a bit more. It depends on the org. But for those participants that are here in this webinar, we do have an offer in place such that the first 4 participants here that contact us, or registrants, let's say, that contact us around these offers, we are willing to offer a credit of $1,500. In terms of what's coming up on our marketing calendar, so if those of you that are looking in terms of making a cadence in place to attend our content, we do have a webinar coming up all around IT roadmaps on December 5th. That's really all about helping you understand and set your technology strategy for the next 1 to 3 years, understanding how cloud fits into that, your business applications, really giving you that footprint and that blueprint, into how your IT organization is going to look and how it can appropriately support the business. We've also got a security webinar that's coming up around December 12th, specifically targeting how to help you and your business look at protecting yourselves from advanced digital threats. I think this is something that continues to be in the news, and really we want to make sure that we're giving you a lens into how we view this and how we've worked with other organizations to protect and to safeguard them. So with that, we really want to say thank you. If there are any questions, please let us know. Actually, I don't see the contact details there, but you can send out any information or questions to cloud@ProServeIT. I'm really happy to answer any questions or content you have, and we're looking forward to this. Rick actually has a question here. He's asking, you've been demoing the modern SharePoint team sites. While these have some new features, mostly it's a new look and there are many deficiencies compared to the legacy SharePoint Online team sites. How much implementation are you doing with the modern sites versus the legacy SharePoint Online sites?
So that's a good question. I personally like the modern view, and the reason why, it kind of answers your question, it is easier, and it's more about giving the power to power users or SharePoint champions within the company to make the edits themselves, and also not relying on people who are more technical, right? So like you mentioned with the legacy stuff, there are some features that are usable from that perspective. However, there was more configuration from a technical perspective. So, and I guess this is a great adoption tip to get people to start using SharePoint and getting the latest information. Like I said, the dashboard and those news. We actually can have people from different departments, whether it's a department head or department associates, to provide this information. All we have to do is create the infrastructure for them, and they can create the pages, fill in all the information, and all they have to really know is how to use Microsoft Office, because it has a very similar interface. All they have to click on is a plus icon, and you have the option of dropping in a Power BI chart, dropping in pictures, text, etc. And it is easier to fill out this content from a non-IT perspective.
So I think, Rick, another way to look at that is most of our, so if there's complex items that might need to be done within SharePoint, there obviously is still a place and a time for, let's say, the legacy look and feel, which really has a different set of features than the modern one. What we're finding for how most people consume SharePoint, the modern sites really fit the bill and kind of deliver that. But that is the roadmap. So what we've demonstrated here today is where Microsoft is looking to take SharePoint Online. They want to make sure it's a mobile-first experience. They want to make sure that it competes and compares favorably to other content management platforms that are perhaps less famous than SharePoint from an integration perspective, but more famous than SharePoint from an ease of use perspective. So really the vision that Microsoft has is how do we get and bring all of the features and functionality that's required into these modern sites that you saw demonstrated today, and that's the vision. They're looking to transition everything to this and away from the legacy SharePoint sites.
And sort of to add to that, like Jamie was saying, you still do have the legacy SharePoint features within Office 365, and like I said, business processes speaking, SharePoint, we can model it towards your business process, so you can still do custom development and some of those legacy still, but focus is on ease of use right now.
Yeah. Perfect. So I think that's, I'm just scrolling through the questions, make sure I didn't miss anything. No, I think that's all the questions. So again, thank you for your time. We'll be following up with you folks via email. I believe that you'll have a recording of this webinar made available for you. So if it's something that you want to share back to your business, you will have the ability to do that. And if you do want to take us up on our offers, we'd love to have a conversation to see how this can fit into your business, make you more effective, more efficient, and more secure. And if you do need some assistance in terms of positioning this to the business around return on investment and how this would look, also very happy to have that conversation, have a lot of good content specific to presenting this at an executive level that will really resonate. So again, thanks for your time. Glad you could join us, and hopefully see you guys all soon at either our next event or in person speaking about an opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you.